to Sports Law Media on YouTube. It's you guys, Law broadcasting live today, November 12th, 2025. We are doing season 1, episode 2 of Hoops and Pucks and Wednesdays. Oh my. So we're going to talk about college basketball, men and women. We're going to talk about NBA basketball. We're going to talk the G League for NBA, the NBA G League. We're going to talk about NHL hockey, and since it is in the hockey realm of things, we will be talking field hockey. So, before getting really into my picks for who is going to win games and whatnot, first we got to go over a couple things. One, we got to go over the Associated Press AP poll top 25. Hello, anyway, we're going to go over the top 25 in women's and men's basketball, and then we'll go from there. So in the AP poll, top 25 for the women for college basketball, number 1, UConn. Number 2, South Carolina. Number 3, UCLA. Number 4, Texas. Number 5, LSU. Number 6, Oklahoma. Number 7, Baylor. Number 8, USC. Number 9, Maryland. Number 10, North Carolina State. Number 11, North Carolina. Number 12, Tennessee. Number 13, Ole Miss. Number 14, Michigan. Number 15, Duke. Number 16, Iowa State. Number 17, TCU. Number 18, Notre Dame. Number 19, Vanderbilt. Number 20, Oklahoma State. Number 21, Iowa. Number 22, Louisville. Number 23, Kentucky. 24, Michigan. And 25, Washington. In the AP poll top 25 for college men's basketball, we have number 1, Houston. Number 2, Purdue. Number 3, UConn. Number 4, Duke. Number 5, Arizona. Number 6, Michigan. Number 7, BYU. Number 8, Alabama. Number 9, Kentucky. Number 10, Florida. Number 11, Texas Tech. Number 12, Louisville. Number 13, St. John's. Number 14, Illinois. Number 15, UCLA. Number 16, Iowa State. Number 17, Michigan. Number 18, North Carolina. 19, Gonzaga. 20 is Tennessee. 21 is Arkansas. Number 22 is Auburn. 23, Creighton. 24, Wisconsin. And 25, Kansas. Now, let's go over what we'll do now is I'll go over who's playing in women's college basketball, the time of game when it starts, and as we go on, I'll tell you who I think is going to win the game. So let's get into this. All right, in progress right now for, starting at 10 o'clock this morning, you have in women's basketball, Bloomfield versus Delaware State, Washington Adventist versus Morgan State, Nichols versus Florida State. Later today, you have Coppin State versus Penn State, North Florida versus Tulane, Chicago State versus Illinois State, New Orleans versus New Mexico, Kennesaw State versus East Tennessee State, Buffalo versus Vermont. Well, hello, how are you today? I appreciate you joining me, Monster. I appreciate it. Root beer's a good drink, yes. Let's see. You have Buffalo versus Vermont, Sam Houston versus Arkansas Pine Bluff, Purchase versus New Haven, Pennsylvania versus Drexel, Liberty versus James Madison, Texas A&M International versus Texas Southern, Brown versus Holy Cross, DePaul versus Bradley, Stony Brook versus Fordham, Ryder versus Boston College, Mount St. Mary's versus Bucknell, Youngstown State versus Michigan State, South Carolina Upstate versus Kentucky, Colby Sawyer versus Dartmouth, Davidson versus Appalachian State, Delaware versus Old Dominion, Northern Kentucky versus Ball State, Norfolk State versus Duke, Southern versus Ole Miss, Akron versus Notre Dame, Vanderbilt versus Austin Peay, Colorado versus Louisville, Richmond versus William and Mary, Arkansas Baptist versus Alcorn State, Evansville versus Eastern Kentucky. Let's see. All right, we'll go over just for that list right there. There's more, but we'll go over my picks for who's going to win on that list. So in Bloomfield versus Delaware State, I'm going Delaware State. In the Washington Adventist Morgan State, I picked Morgan State. I picked Florida State to defeat Nichols, Coppin State to defeat Penn State, North Florida to defeat Tulane, Chicago State to defeat Illinois State, New Mexico defeat New Orleans, East Tennessee State defeats Kennesaw State, Buffalo defeats Vermont, Sam Houston defeats Arkansas Pine Bluff, New Haven defeats Purchase, Pennsylvania defeats Drexel, James Madison defeats Liberty, Texas Southern defeats Texas A&M International, Holy Cross defeats Brown, Bradley defeats DePaul, Stony Brook defeats Fordham, Ryder defeats Boston College, Mount St. Mary's to defeat Bucknell, Michigan State loses to Youngstown State, South Carolina Upstate loses to Kentucky, Dartmouth wins over Colby Sawyer, Appalachian State defeats Davidson, Old Dominion defeats Delaware, Ball State defeats Northern Kentucky, Norfolk State defeats Duke, Southern defeats Ole Miss, Akron defeats Notre Dame, Vanderbilt to defeat Austin Peay, Colorado to defeat Louisville, Richmond to defeat William and Mary, Arkansas Baptist loses to Alcorn State, Evansville defeats Eastern Kentucky. Now, in the remaining women's games, you have Pittsburgh Johnstown versus Cleveland State, Wilberforce versus Wright State, Coastal Carolina versus UNC Wilmington, Princeton versus Villanova, Merrimack versus High Point, UAB versus Alabama A&M, Butler versus Central Michigan, Navy versus Longwood, Western Carolina versus Campbell, Purdue versus Purdue Fort Wayne, Troy versus Chattanooga, North Carolina A&T versus Shaw, Farley Dickinson versus Manhattan, UConn versus Loyola Chicago, Iowa State versus Valparaiso, TCU versus Tennessee State, Kansas versus Lamar, Wisconsin versus Bowling Green, LSU versus Charlotte, Southern Indiana versus St. Louis, Weber State versus UC Davis, Oklahoma versus Kansas City, Idaho State versus UC Irvine, Cal State Northridge versus San Diego State, Omaha versus Utah Tech, California Baptist versus Long Beach State, Creighton versus Nebraska, Sacramento State versus UC San Diego, and Hope International versus Cal State Fullerton. So now let's make my picks for who I think will win those games. Hello to you, Liam. I appreciate you. So in the Pittsburgh Johnstown versus Cleveland State, I have Cleveland State. I have Wilberforce to defeat Wright State. UNC Wilmington versus Coastal Carolina. Princeton will defeat Villanova. High Point defeats Merrimack. UAB defeats Alabama A&M. Butler to defeat Central Michigan. Navy to defeat Longwood. Western Carolina to defeat Campbell. Purdue defeats Purdue Fort Wayne. Troy to defeat Chattanooga. North Carolina A&T to defeat Shaw. Farley Dickinson to defeat Manhattan. UConn to defeat Loyola Chicago. Iowa State to defeat Valparaiso. TCU defeats Tennessee State. Kansas defeats Lamar. Wisconsin defeats Bowling Green. LSU defeats Charlotte. Southern Indiana defeats St. Louis. Weber State defeats UC Davis. Oklahoma defeats Kansas City. Idaho State defeats UC Irvine. San Diego State loses to Cal State Northridge. Omaha loses to Utah Tech. California Baptist loses to Long Beach State. Creighton loses to wins to Nebraska. California Baptist beats Long Beach State. Sacramento State defeats UC San Diego. Hope International beats Cal State Fullerton. So there you have it. That's my picks for the women's college basketball games. The thing that sets these games apart that we talk about, they all take place today on Wednesday. So that's why we have the title Hoops and Pucks and Wednesdays, oh my. And this again is season 1, episode 2. We're going over who is playing on the games and then my picks for who I think will win the games. Oh wow. Hello to Maria and Chris. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate you very much. Next, we'll go over the men's college basketball schedule. Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll go over a list of some of the games, then make my picks, and then do it again for the men's thing because there's a lot of games there too. So anyway, we have Samford versus Texas Southern, Virginia Lynchburg versus VMI, Georgetown versus Binghamton, Tennessee versus North Florida, Bluefield State versus North Carolina Central, Kennesaw State versus Point University, Elon versus Marshall, Bob Jones versus South Carolina Upstate, Longwood versus James Madison, South Carolina versus Presbyterian, Emmanuel in Massachusetts versus New Hampshire, Northern Kentucky versus East Tennessee State, sorry. You have Purdue Fort Wayne versus Western Michigan. You have Bellarmine versus Hanover, South Florida versus Coppin State, VCU versus St. Peter's, Indiana versus Milwaukee, Akron versus Penn State and Chicago, Brown versus Boston University, Virginia Tech versus St. Joseph's, Siena versus St. Bonaventure, American University versus George Washington, Kansas versus Mercyhurst, Marist versus Vassar, Webster versus Southeast Missouri State, Houston versus Oakland, North Dakota State versus St. Scholastica, Vanderbilt versus Eastern Kentucky, Oral Roberts versus Tulsa, Missouri versus Minnesota, Texas State versus UTSA, Westminster in Utah versus Utah Valley, Little Rock versus Marquette, Evansville versus Middle Tennessee. So we'll start with that, and then I'll proceed further in just a minute. But in those games, here are the following that I picked to win the games that I've already gone over just now. Samford defeats Texas Southern. Virginia Lynchburg defeats VMI. Georgetown defeats Binghamton. Tennessee defeats North Florida. Bluefield State defeats North Carolina Central. Kennesaw State defeats Point University. Elon defeats Marshall. Bob Jones defeats South Carolina Upstate. Longwood defeats James Madison. Defeats Presbyterian. Emmanuel in Massachusetts defeats New Hampshire. Northern Kentucky defeats East Tennessee State. Purdue Fort Wayne defeats Western Michigan. Hanover loses to Bellarmine. South Florida defeats Coppin State. VCU defeats St. Peter's. Indiana to defeat Milwaukee. Akron defeats Penn State in Chicago. Brown defeats Boston University. Virginia Tech defeats St. Joseph's. Siena defeats St. Bonaventure. American University defeats George Washington. Kansas defeats Mercyhurst. Marist defeats Vassar. Webster defeats Southeast Missouri State. Houston defeats Oakland. North Dakota State defeats St. Scholastica. Vanderbilt defeats Eastern Kentucky. Oral Roberts defeats Tulsa. Missouri defeats Minnesota. Texas State defeats UTSA. Westminster in Utah defeats Utah Valley. Little Rock defeats Marquette. Middle Tennessee defeats Evansville. All right, here are more men's games that's going on today. We have Nichols versus Valparaiso, UNC Greensboro versus NC State, Prairie View A&M versus Oklahoma State, Farley Dickinson versus Texas, Southern Indiana versus South Dakota, UT Martin versus Bradley, Dartmouth versus Bryant, Weber State versus Utah State, UC San Diego versus Fresno State, Cal Poly versus Colorado State, Idaho versus San Diego, Manhattan versus Utah Tech, South Dakota State versus Oregon, North Texas versus Oregon State, Southern Illinois is playing Nevada, Portland State versus San Francisco, Eastern Washington versus Seattle University, Long Beach State versus Pacific, Montana State versus Stanford, Mississippi Valley State versus Hawaii. So now let me make my picks for those games. I have Nichols beating Valparaiso, UNC Greensboro defeating NC State, Prairie View A&M defeats Oklahoma State, Farley Dickinson defeats Texas, Southern Indiana defeats South Dakota, UT Martin defeats Bradley, Bryant defeats Dartmouth, Weber State loses to Utah State, Fresno State defeats UC San Diego, Colorado State defeats Cal Poly, San Diego defeats Idaho, Utah Tech defeats Manhattan, Oregon defeats South Dakota State, North Texas defeats Oregon State, Southern Illinois defeats Nevada, San Francisco defeats Portland State, Seattle University defeats Eastern Washington, Pacific defeats Long Beach State, Montana State defeats Stanford, and Mississippi Valley State defeats Hawaii. Now, I'm going to just kind of review some things real quick. before moving on, we're going to go back over the top 25 in college sports, so we can have that to look at. All right. So now that we've discussed all the college basketball games that's going on today, let's review the top 25 AP poll one more time before moving on. In the AP poll for the top 25 for women's college basketball, again, you have UConn number 1, South Carolina number 2, UCLA number 3, number 4 is Texas, number 5 is LSU, number 6 is Oklahoma, number 7 Baylor, number 8 USC, number 9 Maryland, number 10 North Carolina State, number 11 North Carolina, number 12 Tennessee, number 13 Ole Miss, number 14 Michigan, number 15 Duke, number 16 Iowa State, number 17 TCU, number 18 Notre Dame, number 19 Vanderbilt, number 20 Oklahoma State, number 21 Iowa, number 22 Louisville, number 23 Kentucky, number 24 Michigan, number 25 Washington. In men's AP poll, in the AP poll top 25 for college basketball for men, number 1 Houston, number 2 Purdue, number 3 UConn, number 4 Duke, number 5 Arizona, number 6 Michigan, number 7 BYU, number 8 Alabama, number 9 Kentucky, number 10 Florida, number 11 Texas Tech, number 12 Louisville, number 13 St. John's, number 14 Illinois, number 15 UCLA, number 16 Iowa State, number 17 Michigan, number 18 North Carolina, number 19 Gonzaga, number 20 Tennessee, number 21 Arkansas, number 22 Auburn, number 23 Creighton, number 24 Wisconsin, and number 25 Kansas. So that has your college basketball covered. Now, we move into the other part of hoops today that's going on, and that is within the NBA. So, what I'll do is I'm going to go over the NBA games, who's playing today, and then I'll go back through and tell you who I picked to win those games for the NBA. In the NBA today, November 12th, 2025, you have Milwaukee versus Charlotte, Chicago versus Detroit, Orlando versus New York Knicks, Memphis versus Boston, Cleveland versus Miami, Washington versus Houston, New Orleans versus Portland, San Antonio versus Golden State, Dallas versus Phoenix, and let's see, Los Angeles Lakers versus Oklahoma City, Atlanta versus Sacramento, and Denver versus the Los Angeles Clippers. So, now I'm going to go back through and tell you who I will pick to win those games. Charlotte defeats Milwaukee. Chicago defeats Detroit. New York will defeat the New York Knicks will defeat Orlando. Boston will defeat Memphis. Miami loses to Cleveland. Houston loses to Washington. New Orleans defeats Portland. San Antonio defeats Golden State. Dallas defeats Phoenix. Let's see. Los Angeles Lakers defeats Oklahoma City. Atlanta defeats Sacramento. And Denver defeats Los Angeles. Now, let's see. I have the G League schedule. And the NBA G League is like a semi-pro level. They're in the NBA, but they're maybe not. These players may not be quite good enough to make it to the full NBA. But that's where some have to go sometimes. So, for those matches that's going on today in the G League, there's not many. You have Cleveland versus Motor City, Westchester versus Capital City, Noblesville versus Sioux Falls, and Maine versus Raptors. So, in those games, I have Motor City defeating Cleveland, Westchester defeating Capital City, Sioux Falls defeating Noblesville, and Maine defeating the Raptors. All right, moving on. We don't have a lot going on in the National Hockey League today, so let's move to hockey right now. No, I am not from Oklahoma. I'm actually from North Alabama. Hello to you. Let's see. Hello, Valerie. Hello, Shadow. How are y'all today? Anyway, in the NHL today, we have the New York Rangers versus Tampa Bay. We have Edmonton versus Philadelphia, Buffalo versus Utah, and New Jersey versus Chicago. Those are the only National Hockey League matches that we have today for that day, for today's date. So in those matchups, I have the New York Rangers defeating Tampa Bay. I have Philadelphia defeating Edmonton. I have Utah defeating Buffalo, and I have New Jersey defeating Chicago. Now, this is going to be the fun one. In women, in college sports, women have what they call field hockey, which is the rules of hockey, but it's played on a grassy surface and stuff, and there's different rules and different things like that. And they are in the process of having their NCAA Division I field hockey championship. So with that, the opening round starts today, November 12th. Then the first round, as they call it, starts November 14th. The second round or quarterfinals will be November 18th. The semifinals will be November 21st, and the championship will be November 23rd. The teams that are in this field hockey championship are Drexel, St. Joseph's, Fairfield, Boston University, North Carolina, Duke, Iowa, Northwestern, Yale, Miami in Ohio, Virginia, Harvard, New Hampshire, Wake Forest, UConn, Liberty, Syracuse, Princeton. Those are the teams that are in the Women's Field Hockey Championships. So, in the opening round, I'm going to try to show this. Well, it's not going to work, but in the opening round, you have Drexel versus St. Joseph's, and you also have Fairfield versus Boston University. In the Drexel St. Joseph's game, I have St. Joseph's to win that one and advance to the first round. In the Fairfield Boston University round, I have Boston University moving to the first round. Now, in the first round play, you'll have North Carolina versus if you're following the bracket the way I've got this picked out, let me see if I can't get this to where I can show you. Okay, there we go. So, in the first round, I have North Carolina versus Duke, Yale versus Virginia, Harvard versus Wake Forest, Liberty versus Princeton. So, from that first round game, I picked Duke to defeat North Carolina. In the Yale-Virginia game, I have Yale that moved on. Let's see. In the Harvard-Wake Forest matchup, I have Wake Forest moving on. In the Liberty-Princeton matchup, I have Liberty moving on. So, that puts us to the semifinals now. And in those semifinals, I have Duke versus Yale and Wake Forest versus Liberty. In the Duke-Yale game, I have Yale winning that one. In the Wake Forest-Liberty game, I have Wake Forest. So for the championship for women's field hockey, I have Yale versus Wake Forest, and I have Yale to win it all. So there you have it. That is the picks for women's Division I field hockey. Now, we may have other special live streams where we actually go over brackets and stuff, and it's just a separate thing that's not part of a regular live stream. Most of the time when we do when there's brackets like that, we'll just make picks and we'll make determining factors on who's going to win based upon that. There will be other sports for that, but since field hockey was in the hockey realm, that's part of the hoops and pucks and Wednesdays, oh my, kind of thing. So, anyway, does anybody have any questions regarding what we've talked about today? These live streams regarding college basketball, NBA basketball, college basketball, men and women's, NBA regular season, NBA G League, and NHL hockey. That will be on Wednesdays. I'm not sure what time it will be on Wednesdays, but we will have them every Wednesday through their respective seasons. And then once we start getting to the playoffs, then we'll figure something out regarding that. I do have 2 other live streams that I do. And they're the college football picks, my perspective. We've changed the format on that one a little bit because there was some deep analysis that was going on, but we're changing the format just a little bit, and it'll be that changed format at least for a couple weeks, and then we'll go back to the old way of doing it here soon. But the college football live stream is on Tuesdays. Just not sure what time yet, that it will be on Tuesdays. And we also do one that is based off the NFL, and that also is on Tuesdays. So, anyway, thank you for tuning into this live stream today. I do greatly appreciate each and every one of you. If you will, please hit the like button, please hit the subscribe button, and please hit the notification bell so you can be made aware of when I'm doing these live streams, when I have sports action videos, when I have sports education videos, again, when I broadcast live, or when I have breaking news in the sports world. Also, if you wish to subscribe, it is greatly appreciated, and I do thank you for that. But there's two ways you can do it. One, you can go to www.youtube.com, the slash symbol, the at symbol, SPORTSLOV, or you can go on the YouTube search tab and type in Sportslov Media as two words, SPORTSLOV Media, MEDIA, and you'll know it's me because I have Sportslov Media burned into a basketball as my avatar. I'm also on Twitter X, and you'll find me there with the handle at BobAmin16. That is the at symbol. That is the at symbol BOBAMIN16. Thank you again for tuning into this. We will we'll have other live streams, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to announce this one, for this week on the Wednesday thing. There were some things that were going on, and I got tied up with that. But all of the live streams that we do, I will announce ahead of time as soon as I know. Again, the Wednesday live streams, they will take place on Wednesday, just not sure of the time, but I'll let you know as soon as I know. And then those other ones with the NFL and college, those are on Tuesdays. And again, I don't know what time that will be, but I will let you know as soon as I know. We may have other special live streams that come about, and when those do, I will let you know, and we will do some broadcasting and have some fun. So anyway, thank you again for tuning in. I do hope each and every one of you has a wonderful day. Sportslov Media.